Individual investors aren't always welcomed into hot startup VC funds. Micro VC Mike Kocan of Outbound Capital is changing that. And today, you'll hear how this former Accenture consultant and hedge fund manager is making B2B software bets accessible to angel investors. Welcome back to another edition of The Angel Nest, where real angel investors and entrepreneurs partner to build great companies. I'm David Hemingway. I'm a 5-time founder and now an active angel investor. And this is another in our series of continuing partnership podcasts with Johnnie Walker from Rooled, outsourced CFO, accounting, and consulting services. Rooled are the startup finance experts, and this group of programs is examining the state of the startup world, including the importance of financial reporting and how Rooled has helped their clients to achieve their goals and financial success. Welcome back, Johnnie. Great to see you again.
Thank you, David. Great to be here again.
Today, we're meeting micro VC Mike Kocan of Outbound Capital. Mike is a micro VC with a very different approach that I think will be of interest to a lot of our angel investors because he doesn't just look for institutional money. He involves individual and angel investors in his funds, which specialize in B2B business solutions. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, David. And Johnnie, nice to see you again.
Likewise.
So first question has to be, how does an electrical engineer come to start a micro VC fund?
Yeah, good question, David. I'll give you the kind of the short story there. I was an electrical engineer back in the early 2000s and went to work for the U.S. Army. And this was during the Iraq and Afghanistan invasions, and worked on some chem-bio defense projects, which really piqued my interest in complex, hard tech type solutions to big problems. Ultimately got a little bit bored of working for the government, so decided to go back to business school, and ultimately got out of engineering and went into management consulting. So I was a strategy consultant at Accenture for about 6 years out of the New York office, and worked in many different industries, usually on the CFO's agenda. So we were always trying to solve problems for the CFO and the C-suite of organizations. And usually those solutions to those problems had to do with implementing some sort of technology in order to increase the efficiency of workers, increase revenue for the organization, or decrease costs in some way. Ultimately, I got into investing more entrepreneurially. I actually started a hedge fund with a good friend of mine from undergrad, and we did that part-time for about 4 years until we decided to quit our jobs and do it full-time in 2015. So in 2015, we started working at the fund full-time. I ultimately convinced my partner that I wanted to start investing in startups more as an angel at this point, through the fund. And I invested in lots of different startups based out of New York from 2015 to 2019. In many different types of startups. So consumer technology, B2B technology, B2B software, robotics, biotech, and ultimately realized I really enjoyed the B2B software side of things and also the hard tech side of things, more so than really the consumer investing. So I ultimately ended up splitting off from that fund. My partner and I went in different directions. He was more of a public stock person, and I was more interested in investing in startups. So I spun out to do Outbound Capital in 2020. Raised my first fund in 2021, mainly from individual investors. So we raised from 32 individuals. And now we're actually working on building upon the success of Fund 1 and raising from another crop of individuals and maybe some smaller institutions as well for Fund 2.
And how do you think about the numbers so early on, when companies really don't have very long or even any track records?
Yeah, so we always like to see a thoughtful forecast, although we know that forecast is never, going to come to fruition the way the entrepreneur, thinks it will. And we think more about things in terms of how much will it cost for our startups to find product market fit. And really, the way we think about product market fit is a series of experiments that need to be run. So we have to make sure that the startups are capitalized in a way that they have enough capital to do the experiments that they need to run in order to figure out who their early adopter customers are, how to adjust their product to their early adopters, and how to figure out how to start going to market to these early adopter customers.
Now, Johnnie Walker from Rooled, you've had a lot of experience building business models.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How common is it that entrepreneurs on the first go can adequately forecast what they're going to need in order to get to product market fit?
No, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think what I've found is in being a fractional CFO is a lot of it is really just about sort of in some way coaching, but really encouraging the entrepreneur to think about the numbers more rigorously. I think there's obviously a lot of vision. There's a lot of understanding of the target market generally. There's an idea for the product, but it's about articulating those details in numbers, in financials, and in a way that makes sense to an investor. And that's something that does take time, I think, to develop. Some founders have been through it before, and so really walk into it sort of knowing what to do. And others, I think, require a little bit more sort of, in essence, coaching. A lot of that they will get from the investors. Like I always encourage the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, talk to investors, understand, really what their reactions are, what they're saying, because that's some of the best feedback you're going to get is really from what the investment set is saying. And then we can help them make it look professional and really, be consistent and be reliable, let's say, rather than, as Mike said earlier, these things aren't necessarily about being accurate because what you put down in a forecast is almost never going to happen. But you at least need to make it look as if it really hangs together or show that it hangs together.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. A lot of founders will complain to angel investors. I've certainly been in a lot of these meetings where they say, you guys want to know the unknowable. Right. Yeah. We have no way of knowing how this is going to go. We know it can go one of three ways. And then the answer to that is you need to model that. Right.
Yep.
And although we know that model isn't going to be exactly reflective of what's going to happen, at least we see that you have put in the effort in order to do that,
yep.
which gives us comfort that when you get down the road into real life circumstances, you'll have both the knowledge and the determination to see that through.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. And I think it is very important that the entrepreneur be very intimate with the financials. I'm sure you've seen this a ton of times, Mike. Some entrepreneurs just think they can outsource the entirety of the model and the understanding of it. And I think every entrepreneur at the early stage needs to really know that detail intimately.
So, Mike, is it harder working with angel investors? Since the benefit of what you're doing to a large degree for our community is that we get in on deals that we might not otherwise see. But is that more of a burden on you in terms of managing that cap table?
Well, I'll answer in a couple different ways. We have a lot of angel investors that invest in our fund, so they have exposure to a pool of VC and of startup investments, not just their individual investments that they make. And then we also offer follow-on opportunities through special purpose vehicles for our angels to make additional bets in some of the startups in our portfolio. But when we make an investment in a startup, usually it's at the seed stage or pre-seed, and oftentimes there's angels that are already on the cap table or joining in the round, and usually the angels are very helpful to the founders. And also I think ours being a micro VC fund, we are very helpful as well. And so I think actually founders get a pretty big bang for their buck from an angel investor or a micro VC fund who's willing to step in and help from an expertise perspective and really helping to coach through some of these early challenges that pop up in building a startup.
And what are some of the most exciting opportunities you're seeing at the moment? What is really getting you excited about the future?
Well, it's hard to be an investor right now and not see lots of AI applications being developed. It's very, I think, challenging to space to invest in because it's such an early technology, and also very hyped in the initial stages of the hype cycle. So I spent a lot of time talking to companies that are starting AI apps for the enterprise, and trying to figure out what are some of the pitfalls to watch out for. And what we've really kind of come down to at Outbound Capital is investing in founding teams that have the mental plasticity to be able to continue to to solve a big problem for their customers and be able to adapt to an underlying changing landscape in AI. And I think it really comes down to solving a big problem, having it be a problem that can be solved in a new way through AI, and also having a founding team that's very adaptable to an ever-changing and fast-moving environment.
So you're investing very early on, and one of the things that investors are worried about these days is how do founders get to the next round? Because sometimes it's easier actually to get the friends and family or the seed round than it is to get, the extended seed or even to an A round. And that's where Johnnie comes in, because that's where investors really want to know, what the MVP or what the pilot has actually done. So does that affect your judgment when you're looking for opportunities to invest in at the very early stage? Are you saying, which one of these companies is actually going to be able to get the next round and keep going?
Yeah, so we think a lot about that. So we typically invest at seed, and really I think about this question in terms of pre or post product market fit. And product market fit in our definition is the demand for your product is outstripping your ability to supply it. So it's actually a pretty high bar. And if we can help our founders get to product market fit, they're not going to have a hard time raising an A round. And that's really our North Star. And it might not be perfect product market fit, but at least early product market fit. And we also are seeing in the A rounds that we're trying to help our founders get to, they're more at like 1.5 million to 2.5 million in ARR today. And investors are looking for 100, 200%, 300% growth on that before they will fund an A round. It is a hard fundraising environment at the A. And so we're looking to help our founders find product market fit, also get to that revenue numbers and those growth numbers. And it's actually a pretty big hurdle. And it takes a lot longer than I think founders think it's going to take. So we really think it's going to take at least 24 months, if not 36 months, in order for founders to go from like a pre-seed or seed round to actually finding early product market fit and hitting those metrics to get to the seed to get to the Series A.
And then when they find product market fit, you send them over to Johnnie for some fine tuning, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's when they have to start getting their books in order, and actually they can start adding the revenue component to their books as well.
There you go.
Yeah, I think I would just comment there. That is that very typical sort of scale up in the finance need in the company. Exactly to your point, they've proven the actual market appetite for the product, and then things start to scale, and that's when existing finance processes tend to break. And often it's not immediately obvious that they're not working properly. You start to see this when the reporting runs off and the month close sort of runs long. And you want to get that right finance support in there just at the point or before, ideally, that scale starts to happen. So I think that Series A trigger is great. I think Series Seed a lot of the time has been great also because those seed rounds have been relatively large. But those are critical points to get the right kind of support in for definite.
Mike Kocan from Outbound Capital, Johnnie Walker from Rooled. Thanks for joining us today. And Mike, thanks for getting us angel investors in on some of those deals.
Thanks for having me, David. And thank you, Johnnie.
Thank you, Mike. Good to see you.
You can find contact information for our guest today at our website, theangelnest.com, where you can also reach me. If you know of a company or an exciting opportunity we should talk about, I'd love to hear from you. My email is david@theangelnest.com. I'm David Hemingway. We produce The Angel Nest with help from David Newhoff at the beautiful Art Deco Film Center building just west of Times Square in New York. Thanks for listening, and here's hoping my fellow angels and the founders they support find their next great venture. So long until next time.